Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Milton Public Schools School Committee. We'll start this off by calling the meeting to order, and we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very much. Second item on the agenda is to approve tonight's agenda. Everybody could look it over and let me know if there's any committee reports that need to be struck. Yes. Seeing no objections, I will take the agenda as approved. We will move on to item number 3, public comment. For public comment, in accordance with school committee policy, we welcome members of the community to share their perspective with us during public comment. We have set aside up to 15 minutes for this part of the meeting, and individuals may speak for up to 3 minutes each. While the school committee does not respond directly to public comment, there may be opportunities for members to address issues that are raised over the course of the meeting when relevant topics are on our agenda. We strive to engage in respectful discourse during our meetings and ask that public comment speakers keep that in mind. Speakers should introduce themselves and provide their address for the record. Is there anybody here for public comment? We have one person in person, which we'll go ahead and welcome up. And if you are online and looking to speak, if you could just use the raise hand feature on the Zoom. I'll start here. I will keep track of the 3 minutes.
Oh, I wonder why I'm here.
Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Erin Bradley, former select board member and town meeting member, precinct 4. I have one child that graduated from Milton Public Schools in 2021. Ouch. And the other one who is currently a junior in the school. I'm here because I had the pleasure of watching you guys work for many years when you tried to figure out your new calendar for the school year. Remember that? Some of you sat here for many months, discussed it, tried to figure it out, make sure it was equitable for all the students. I'm here today to talk to you about a reoccurring issue that continues to happen with the Milton High School track team. Last year, it was the graduation that was in conflict with the Division III state championships. This year, it was the prom. I completely understand about graduation dates. I get that. I get it set in stone. Understandable. However, the prom is not set in stone. The prom is a date that we pick, and we pick it at the beginning of the year from our student body, and we make a reservation. When my son's father called the principal, when we first found out when the date was, the principal said to him, "Well, do we even know that we're fielding a team there?" So let me just tell you what the track team did at the Division III state championships, because it seems to me that there might be a disconnect with how big of a team this is and what exactly they do for our town. We had 5 state champions. 5 people medaled. They are the champions of the state, just like the hockey team, just like the football team, just like the theater team that won, same thing. I'm gonna say their names tonight because it's not often that they get their names said in a public forum. The first one, oh my gosh, it just refreshed. The first one's name is Jonah Stevens Roy. He's a sophomore, so this is gonna be a consideration for the next few years, because let me tell you, he's gonna medal. Not only did he win 1, but he won 2 medals. He won both the 110 hurdles and the 400 hurdles. Amazing, amazing athlete. The next one is my son, also an amazing athlete, Robert Beato, who won the Division III 800 meter. Ella Turner also won gold in the high jump. Annalise Aguilar was the 5th gold medalist, and she won the 100 hurdles. All in all, they fielded, scrolling back up in the coach's email.
30 seconds. So.
I only have 30 seconds left? Can I take somebody else's time too? All right, I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
So they won 20 medals. Top 8, 20 medals were won. When we tried to talk to Principal Cahill about this, she informed me that there's no conversations that happen between the AD and the principal regarding scheduling of these items. I understand that there's a lot of sports, I understand there's a lot of activities. However, this is now the second year in a row that the track team has had to, can I keep going or no? Thanks. This is the second year in a row that the track team has tried to make arrangements for this to happen. Now, let me just say this, I know track is really difficult and it's complicated and I don't get half of it, but they have to put in their relay teams weeks in advance, right? So they couldn't field the relay teams that were gonna run on Sunday because they thought that it was supposed to be on Saturday and they had the prom. So more than half of the track team was not gonna be there for the second half, but because of the storms that they pushed it off, right? So we still couldn't run in that. So we couldn't even medal. These teams are teams that have won indoor, the girls just won the indoor championships, the boys won last year. These teams are important, these athletes give their all, and they should not be treated as second-class citizens just because they're not on a giant football team, a giant soccer team, a giant whatever team that this town, relishes over and fawns over. I'm not asking for special treatment for the track team. All I want is for the AD to come up with a calendar over the summer, because let me tell you, I already know what the track meets are for next year. The schedule's already out. I want him to come up with a schedule and I want him to give it to the principal so that they can have a record of when these dates are gonna be, so they know what impact it's gonna have on these kids. That's it. That's all I'm asking that you guys do, is break down the silos within your high school so that we can have a calendar and maybe the track team doesn't get messed up next year over this. I was gonna use another word, but I'm using messed up. So that's all I have to say. Thank you all for your work. Thank you for your work that you gave on the calendar for the school. I just want a little attention to be done as we do things for our seniors and our juniors, because it matters.
Thank
So
you.
that's it. Thank you so much. Y'all have a great week.
Thank you.
Oh, and happy graduation.
Thank you.
There's no other members in person for public comment. Anybody online, remember, please raise your hand.
Yes. Nicole Boyson has her hand raised online.
Unmute.
Okay, oh my goodness, hold on a second. Hold on, Nikki, I have to promote you, there. Okay.
Hi there. I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, so hi. I'm fighting a bit of a cold, so I apologize for my voice. I just wanted to say quickly that I really appreciate your considering my petition, the work we're doing with homeschooling kids, and all the wonderful treatment and help that you've given me. I'll look forward to the vote later in the meeting. Just wanted to say hello. Thank you.
I'm sorry, just for the record, could you provide your name and address?
Oh my gosh, of course. Nicole Rixdalis, 26 Columbine Road.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You can unpromote me now.
Okay. Let me figure out how to do it.
We'll try and take you out the table.
Thank you.
Okay, I go remove,
Yeah.
right?
I'll sign back in if I get lost.
Okay, thank you. Uh-oh,
Any other
wait
hands
a
raised?
second.
You get the-
I just want her to be able to rejoin, if she wants to do that.
Any other hands raised?
No.
Seeing no other hands raised and no one else here in person, we will conclude public comment. Move on to item number 4, which is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chairperson Loring. A quick report out on some things that are happening around the district. We just had, prior to our meeting tonight, the reception for Milton Public School retirees. We were so happy to have folks come out tonight for a short reception. Chairperson Loring gave nice speeches about each one of our retirees, and I'd like to read their names so you know in the public that these folks were here tonight and honored as retirees in the Milton Public Schools. The first one, Marie Lorraine Brown from Glover, Gail Chase from our business office, Rena Chen, grade 5 teacher at Cunningham, Mary Ellen Coyne, special education at Cunningham, Eleanor Jones, paraprofessional and all-around leader from a paraprofessional role at the Tucker School, Maureen Blank, nurse at Glover, Kathy Mallory, library aide, Grace Marinelli, worked for our office at staff as well as a paraprofessional at the high school, Owen McElhaney, grade 8 history teacher at the Pierce, Barbara Perry, nurse at Pierce Middle School, Maggie Radley, physical education at Milton High School, and Joyce White, who was culinary arts at the high school. Congratulations to these hardworking and great educators, and they did a great service to our students over the past, to some folks, I think it was 34 years, so lots of years of good experience, so thank you on behalf of the Milton Public Schools. We get to the next big group that we're recognizing at this time of year is our senior class. Last night, thank you everybody for being at the senior awards ceremony. We saw $205,000 worth of scholarships handed to our seniors, along with a lot of other awards in recognition. So we're so thankful that the families and the students, the school committee, and most importantly, our donors were there to present those awards. The seniors are having a great week. Last week was the prom on the 30th of May. Tuesday, June 2nd was seniors awards night, which was last night. Today was graduation practice. Tomorrow will be graduation practice as well. And they will all be on time. We hope they'll all be on time. The Boosters Varsity Celebration is tonight for all of our athletes. Senior Field Day is on Thursday the 4th, and Friday, the clap out on June 5th, where they have lunch and yearbooks for the students. And Sunday will be graduation at 2 p.m. If it is outside, it'll be at Brooks Field. If it is inclement weather, it will be inside at the Copeland Fieldhouse. Monday, June 8th, we have Katie Greer, who is speaking to our families and students connected to technology and social media. We have Katie working with our 5th graders and 8th graders as well as parents, so please check our website for those nights. It is Monday night at 6:30, June 8th. That's Monday, correct?
Yep.
Instrumental music lesson night is Tuesday, June 9th at 6 p.m. for those folks who take advantage of that. And on June 11th, the Milton Arts Center from 5 to 7 will hold its Milton Public Schools Art Showcase. So we thank the Milton Arts Center for doing so and recognizing our students and staff who are artists as well. Bus registration, sorry to pack in some serious news here, but registration is open until June 30th. We had a great meeting with the bus company last week. I want to thank Katie Blake for her leadership on this. The school committee has added an extra bus. We have met with the bus company in order to them to really pay attention to our middle and high school bus runs, which were problematic last year. We believe that adding an extra bus and also the bus company is providing 2 or 3 larger buses to create more capacity, that we will be able to provide bus service for middle and high school students at a much higher level than we did last year. And we thank Katie for her work on this with the bus company, and we look forward to that working out this year, next school year. So please register by June 30th. We want to have a couple more highlights. Milton High School Theater. We just found out that the theater program's production of Frozen and The Drowsy Chaperone were nominated for 9 Massachusetts Educational Theater Guild Theater Awards. This is another recognition for theater that also was the best in the state over the spring and winter season. The 52 high schools across Massachusetts participated, and they were incredibly honored to be one of the 6 schools nominated for Best Overall Production. So again, a huge deal for our theater arts students. In music, the awards and honors keep coming for our music community as well. The music department was recognized as one of NAMMS, which is the National Association for Music Merchants' best communities in music education. Milton continues to be a music and arts community. The theater program, the music program, and our arts program is outstanding. There's a list of music awards that we want to let people know that we'll be publishing in our next newsletter. But as we sat last night at our awards night, I actually thought back of just how many great things are happening with our students in school and outside of school. The awards that we heard about last night, every athletic team in the fall, in the winter, in the spring made tournament. All of our theater groups that participated this year made state finals. Our band made state finals. Our STEM program competed, our robotics competed. Our elementary Tucker School future problem solvers are off to the nationals next week. These are just great things that are happening in and outside the classroom that we're really proud of. And we just want to, announce that to the community and celebrate it with the community. So thank you very much. That's my update before we get to regular business.
Next item, the preliminary approval of the music department field trip.
We actually have preliminary, I'm sorry, reading correct. So this is the first reading of the trip for the music department. The second reading we'll have at a fall school committee meetings, but we wanted to get this in front of the school committee early. The Milton School Band and Choir, under the direction of Rebecca Damiani and Julia Hanna, will perform. The destination is Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. And this is not just a trip to go to Disney World, this is where they will participate and take part in a program there. And they're asking for the school committee to read through this application. And then when we get to the fall, any details and questions that you have, we'll be able to answer at that time. The itinerary is part of the packet that you have. They will leave Wednesday, February 3rd, and they will return, I believe, on Saturday, February 6th. Any questions about this, or do folks want to leave that until we see Rebecca will be at the meeting that we have in the fall.
At the meeting where we will be speaking with Rebecca, will we be talking a little bit more about, this is my first field trip I've been on this side of. Will we be talking more about the details of like, I see that there's like a nurse and there's like 120 kids and there's gonna be like, the plan is to have 10 kids per chaperone, and I did like a little bit of research just to prepare myself for this, and I've read some things about different requirements, policies for administering medication if you're going out of state for a nurse, and licensing and all this other stuff. And do we have details about like where we are with that we like, or will we have those details when we have our next meeting?
We will. I can say that we just experienced that when we went to DC. The nurse went on the trip. There is specific detail regarding the licensure of who can administer outside of the state. That's why our nurse goes on the trip, and we actually pay for that nurse to be there because that's a paid duty for them. And so I think in the spring of '25, which would be last school year, that became a factor that people really had to look in and understand how it worked. And I believe that they've figured out what the formula is, and our nursing team is well aware of what it looks like to go in another state, but we can definitely have them talk about that.
Thank you.
You know, the other pieces are fundraising. I think Rebecca and the team wanted to get this up and running so we could have them let the students know to begin thinking about if they wanted to go and what the fundraising would look like, so they could begin to pay to reduce the cost for all of our students as well.
Just to be clear for the public, since they might not be looking at the documents, this is February of the next school year.
That's correct.
Anticipation, so that makes a lot of notice. Any other questions from members before we move on and talk about this in the second reading? Hearing none, we will continue. Up next is the school building committee presentation. I'll welcome our chair of our school building committee, Sean O'Rourke, here to provide us a bit of a Oh yeah, we did skip over the hiring update, that's right. As he gets set up, if you want to.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. Very happy to announce some of the larger positions we have that were vacated. We had search teams for director of finance position, which we have offered a contract to an individual who will be hopefully signing on by the end of the week. At that point, they will give notice to their district about their exiting and coming to Milton. They will start on July 1st. We want to thank Katie Blake for her time, but also has identified 2 days in June where we'll try to overlap Katie with the new individual starting, so we have some overlap in preparation for starting the school year and actually ending this fiscal year. So we're very happy with that hire. We have also hired a new technology director for education and data analytics. We have a young man coming to us from the Needham Public Schools who was vetted by a team in a search committee that was led by Kalakosa. That person will be a Unit B employee, and they'll start also in July 1. Because they're in Unit B, they don't work a full year. So we'll work a schedule out to get that person up and running and get them introduced to the district and be onboarding as well, that position. And lastly, we had the finalist interviews for the Human Resources Director yesterday. Carla and I and Laurie Dunn met 3 candidates from 3 different school districts in the state. We have very, very good finalists that we're really struggling with our decision right now, and we're calling references today and tomorrow when we're making that final decision. So by next week, we'll have all 3 positions hired, prepared to onboard in July, and prepare for the school year coming up in the summer. In the buildings, we have building-based teams doing the hiring, the interviewing for each of those schools individually that are led by our principals and teacher interview teams as well, building by building.
Questions about the hiring? Not, thank you. Now we'll move to the school building committee presentation, just to kind of orient us and provide some framing for Sean Jemison. Sean graciously agreed to come give his time, as he does so much, and so appreciative of you, Sean, to kind of get the school building committee lens as to kind of where their role is here and what they're seeing as relates to La Beret and as relates to kind of the ongoing work of the committee related to Guile, the Guile site. After we hear from Sean and members will ask questions and talk about that, we'll then pivot over to the superintendent and the school department team will share some of the slides that have been in the materials around the options part 2 from our conversation 2 weeks ago. So those are kind of the things we're providing to members. If there's nothing about that, I'll pass it over to you, Sean. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and just for the record, Sean Work, School Building Committee Chair, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 8. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Please, yeah.
If you can make it.
Can we promote Sean?
Yes, hold on, let me
Oh,
see if I
sorry.
can do that.
Talking more to people than that.
I did run into the challenge of
I got it.
removing you. I might just deal with that when we get to that point. You're a panelist now, so can you share?
Yep. Perfect. So, yeah, as Mark mentioned, tonight, I just want to give an update for MSBA, kind of where school building committee is at. And then also follow up, following your discussion a couple weeks ago regarding La Beret and kind of how that fits within the framework of the path we're going with MSBA right now, and also how it doesn't fit within the path for what we're doing with MSBA. So, what you see here is the flow chart with MSBA, which are the 9 modules that we have there. We had worked the past year on Module 1, which we completed in February 25th of this year, which basically had a certain outcome from it, which is essentially enrollments. And right now, we're moving on to Module 2, which is formation of our project team, of an owner's project manager and an architect and engineer. School building committee is actually meeting on Monday to go through a short list. So for applicants for the owner's project manager, we had 11 applicants, and we shortlisted just recently down to 3. So we're going to be interviewing each one of them on Monday. So, as I mentioned, the outcome from Module 1 was essentially, call it boundaries that they have us under MSBA that we have to operate under. So what that is they looked at certain data that we provided them to develop an enrollment analysis for 3 options. And those 3 options are an addition and a renovation to Collycott Cunningham School to accommodate 1,400 students. And they do this as a baseline for any statement of interest. So whatever school you submit on, they automatically say you have to do an ad reno as an option. We're not anticipating that as something that will go far, mainly due to space constraints. But the other 2 that are there that I think are the ones we focus on is a new elementary school, grades K to 5th, plus a preschool component. And the enrollment that they gave us of that was 495 students. And essentially, we defined the preschool component of that. So when we did this process before, we had about 112 in pre-K. The other option that we're looking at also is a new middle school, grades 7th and 8th, plus preschool. And the enrollment for that was 660 students plus pre-K. So again, that's kind of the framework if we're working with MSBA under our current timeline that we've got to hold to. So those 2 options, the new elementary school, the new middle school, there's no site constraints on there. So we're able to look at Gow Road that we have there, that we got through the land swap, and Labouré College. So Gow Road, just again for comparison, is a 6.4 acre site. Labouré is a 4.7 acre site plus 3 existing buildings that are there. Just an update too for your guys' information just came through today. So the land swap, if you recall, in the special town meeting, I think in last year, we put an extension to the land swap. Senator Driscoll texted me this morning that it got passed through the House and is on to the governor for signature. So the land swap had an expiration date of 2028. It's now probably going to go to 2033. So just for context. So when we talk about Gow Road, the 2 options that we're looking at there again are a middle school with a certain enrollment of 660 and a preschool enrollment of 112. Elementary school 495 and 112 again. So again, a 6.4 acre site, no existing buildings, and essentially it's all new construction we're going to do there. So that is kind of what we're working with MSBA right now. If we purchase Labouré and want to continue down the path that we're doing with MSBA right now, the only 2 options we can look at are those same 2. Essentially a middle school with an enrollment of 660 or an elementary school with an enrollment of 495. So because those are the kind of constraints that we're put on there, that's what we're looking at. Now, as I said, preschool is an option that we're allowed to define as part of that. With looking at the work that we did before on Gow Road, both of these options are going to be tight on the Labouré site, so I would assume there would be no preschool component on there. You know, we'd have to, if we had to squeeze it in, that would probably be what I would anticipate would be part of the option that we'd have to squeeze off. The other part of this too, as we compare the 2, is the other differential that we'd have to look at is the acquisition cost for Labouré. So we'll have to pay money for Labouré, which we wouldn't have to pay for Gow Road. So again, under the framework, if we were going to continue down the MSBA path that we're going down, this is kind of where we're at. So your last meeting that we talked about, you know, knowing MSBA is on one side, there were a number of options that you guys looked at, and I appreciate you guys diving deep into this because these are other feasible options that we need to look through. So, but essentially with those, they don't fit within the boundaries of the constraints that MSBA is putting on us. So essentially that becomes a non-MSBA path that we don't qualify for reimbursement. So one of the things as I listened into the last meeting, I just wanted the public to understand that if we do that down a Labouré path that's non-MSBA, we're not qualifying for the reimbursement that's there. Now, we could go back to MSBA and offer to restart again with some of these non-MSBA options, but essentially you hit a reset button, you go back to module 1, and it would be another year to 2 delay. So that's still an option, and that's honestly for you guys to decide. But in the context of what we're looking at, for Labouré right now, this is essentially what you have for the building that's there. So in green is what's shown as Building A, also known as the mansion that we talked about. Building B is an adjoined office space, multi-level that's there. And Building C, which is the majority of the classroom space, and it's connected, as you see in gray, by a hallway that's there. So a couple of things to keep in mind as you're having your discussions here. The existing classroom sizes that are there are approximately 725 square feet. There's no cafeteria, there's no gymnasium. Building C has minimal bathrooms, so whatever program you're putting in there, we'll have to add bathrooms to accommodate. And then the other one, the main one that I'm looking at here, is whatever renovations we do, I want to keep to Building C, which is the red area. And the reason for that is for the energy code triggers that will come up, that we don't want to go into these historical buildings and have to renovate that entire portion of that. So for us, as I mentioned multiple times at our meetings, school building committee, as far as this decision goes, is in an advisory role. What we're looking at from school committee is to provide us a program. We've signed on DLR Group as an architect, so we've been working kind of ahead of you guys on this to prepare to have an architect ready to kind of take the program that you guys provide and then basically do a fit out of that. So they're gonna come up with a conceptual design, and they're also gonna come up with a cost estimate. Now, the program that you guys provide and the cost estimate all go to the select board, again, as advisory roles, to let them make their decisions. So the key part for me, like, what are our roles here? So for you guys, as far as I see it, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, is to define the educational program and the grade configurations associated with that. Evaluate those options of how they impact the existing overcrowding we experience. And then at the very end, evaluate this option against Scow Road. Again, that's not our decision to make. Our job is just to provide you guys options. You are the elected leaders of the town along with the select board. So that, honestly, for us, that's our role. So again, for us, it's to develop those conceptual program layouts, the obvious construction costs, and then, again, provide it to you guys. And the select board, is to negotiate the purchase price, execute the sale, and then schedule all the required votes that have to occur. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. I don't know if there's questions. If there are, I'll happily entertain them, and if not, I'll happily sit back.
Thank you so much, Sean.
No problem.
Sean, can you provide us an idea? We've talked a little bit about timeline. What is the timeline for this to happen? First of all, I appreciate your work and I appreciate you outlining the different roles that each body has. So the schools has to provide a program that we feel out of our pre-K to 12 grades, what one or two grades we want to pull out and what makes sense for students and the size, et cetera. And when we do that, then the town will be working exclusively with the architect firm that you've identified. And then when will that firm need to produce a document or a summary or a conceptual model for the school committee and the school department to review and decide whether that makes sense or not?
Yeah, so in regards to the timeline, they want to start now. So I'm looking to get them into the building to do a site walk, probably next Friday, if they're available. They're out at a conference till Thursday. And then the anticipation or the hope of that is to provide them the educational plan or the grade configuration that they're looking for. So following the last meeting, I just wrote the original contract under pre-K, but they're open to whatever option you guys come up with, but essentially only one option. They're not going to explore 5 to 6 of them. The intent with them, with the contract that we're looking at, is to work with them over the month of July, June and July, to build up for an August informational session or a decision of here's the floor plans, here's the cost estimate. So the intention is their deadline is the end of July, beginning of August. And the reason we're doing that is if this is to go on the ballot for the November election, the select board has to make the decision by, I think it's August 5th or early August. So we're trying, knowing that's a decision that the select board would have to make, we're trying to work as quickly as we can to do that. And again, that's why, we took the initiative first to reach out to architects to do that. So we weren't coming here tonight saying, oh, we'll talk to them in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We were trying to be proactive on all that stuff. So, the goal is the end of July to have all that answers for you.
And so is your hope and expectation that the school committee and the school administration or the school committee tonight decides to provide you with what that grade choice would be? And if that happens and we walk through this process, is there any ability after we decide, if the town does decide to purchase the space, will there be any other time to revisit the grade configuration, or is this kind of set in stone? Or would the asset be ours at that time and there would be chances for further discussion about what might be a better option if it were discovered?
Yeah, good question. You guys are open to do whatever you want. So the work that we're doing is to only influence what potential the property has, not define like a constrict boundary of this is where we have to go with it. For me, I'm in favor of buying it. I think it's a great asset for the town. I think the town should buy it. That's my personal opinion, not going off school building committee chair and stuff like that. Does it work for a school? That's kind of what we're all trying to figure out. Is it the right fit for what we're doing? So to your point of, the report that we get from the architect, the input and the cost estimate, that's gonna influence whether we buy it or not, potentially. They might decide to buy it regardless.
Right.
But the opportunity to shift from that, if something comes up later on that we would like to go from one option A to option Z, we can do that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Sean, I have a couple questions. I should probably know the answers to these, a couple of these as a delegate to the school building committee. The preschool option, is that, or the preschool part of the MSBA program, did I hear you right that that is optional under any circumstance? Like we could lop that off if we wanted to, whether it's La Brea or whether it's the Guile Road site?
Correct. So the enrollment component of it, what I was saying was optional. They allowed they didn't prescribe an enrollment to us that said you have to provide a school for this many kids. What they said is, like, you wanna provide preschool, let us know what that enrollment number is, and then, there's a certain formula that builds into their reimbursement. Like, there's not it's not as heavily reimbursed as the overall school, but there are some reimbursements for it. But the overall enrollment, like the prescription of that, is what was open to us.
Yeah. So if we wanted to do a K-5 option under the MSBA is authorized for K-5.
Yep.
If we could squeeze that into La Brea.
Yep.
But we couldn't fit preschool, we could just remove preschool and still be eligible for the program.
Correct.
Okay. So if I understood you right, the three buildings, you were saying we only really wanna touch the main academic building so that we don't trigger the stretch code for the entire site. So under that code, they view the three buildings as three distinct buildings.
To be determined.
Okay,
I mean,
that feels like a big deal.
Yeah, my interpretation of it, because you have a separate structure of that building, right? The academic building, as you're putting building C, that I think has separate electrical and gas services to it, so essentially it acts as its own, and it's interconnected only by that hallway that interconnects them. You could make a case that, the renovations are isolated to that building, we're only drawing kind of the boundary of the upgrades to that building there.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things within the architect, we're gonna ask them to look
Okay.
at. But
They're
through
gonna weigh in
initial
on that.
discussions, that's
Okay.
kind of our where we're heading with it. And that's why for program space, I don't wanna aim to anything in building B or A, because if we start doing anything in there, call it this overall project, if it becomes a project, I don't wanna trigger anything over there that causes us to renovate the entire mansion, cause
Yeah.
it's quite nice.
What percentage of the whatever building do you have to touch to trigger stretch code?
I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know. But again, that's one of the things that we're gonna work with the architect. Like, my goal for that, again, is whatever that, I keep the renovations isolated to building C, so that way, it's not triggering all the others. That's like kind of the goal going into it right now.
And last question, will the architect be also looking at new construction potentially needed for the building, like a cafeteria?
100%.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
so it's not just interiors.
Yeah,
Alright.
so the scope of the architect is to take whatever program that you guys prescribe, look at how we fit it into the existing building. And then also, there's obvious need to add on to the building, so what that add-on is gonna be. And then that will get turned over to a cost estimator that will have a certain renovation cost that will be there and a new construction cost associated with it. The one thing with library, just to note too, that they did have a master plan that looked at it, and it did have an addition, so the image that I was showing on the slides, and I can share them later, that had that like red square on that, they had already planned to do an addition there previously, so we're trying to leverage some of that previous work that was already done to say, there was additions planned, here's where they were looking to do it, can we, just use that and make it better.
Cool, thanks, Sean.
Lizzie?
You had pointed out the need to do some sort of comparison and contrast between this non-MSBA path and the staying MSBA, which, as you were just saying, could include like a K-5 school at the site. But I guess I'm wondering how would we really be able to do that if we have to deliver one option? Because we won't be able to do both with the architect, like both a K-5 in the building and the pre-K in the building, right?
I
So
got a good answer.
how, it just seems like we wouldn't be able to do a very thorough comparison.
So think of it this way, we're going down with school building committee parallel paths right now, right? We're on the MSBA path, we're hiring an autonomous project manager, we're gonna hire a new architect for that. As part of that path, that option falls under that path. So if we continue down that path and we
Oh, under
purchase-
the, I see,
Correct.
gotcha.
If
Oh,
we purchase
okay.
MSBA, it would be a different architect, different team that could look at that option. So that's a longer timeline that we're working with right now,
The MSBA
correct?
K-5 at Labouré
Yeah.
timeline.
So if we.
Got it, okay.
So as I mentioned with MSBA, we don't have site constraints. So as we open up, we have building constraints or building options that we have to look at. That option can be on any site, right? So
Right.
if when we get to that point, the town has purchased Labouré and we're still on that path, we can now add Labouré into that site analysis and the program on that site.
I see, so that would just require the town to purchase the site without certainty of which path we were gonna pursue. That would just, they would have to be willing to do that.
Correct.
Got it, thank you.
Steve?
You were saying that if we wanted to look into Labouré and couldn't make the current constrictions work, that we would have to like start over, or we could start the process all over again. We're on module 2, so we've gone through one module, but it sounds like that was a very long haul. But it sounds like it was also mostly about coming up with some numbers. Can you give me some more information about like what that module 1 consisted of and why it's why it's gonna take that long again?
So the funny part is, I hope MSBA is not watching when I say this, but like working with the state agency is very slow, right? So we were accepted to the MSBA in May of last year. The required documentation they required us to submit, we had like 270 days, we had it done in 90 days, we submitted it in July. So it dealt with housing production, birth rates, historical enrollments, a number of different things. The maintenance records that Tom McCarthy put together, which was great. And they asked for those maintenance records because they're gonna reimburse us a large chunk of money. They wanna make sure the assets they're investing in are maintained. So the cool thing is, we have all that stuff, we can resubmit it really quick, but it still took a year. I mean, it still took like 6 to 8 months after we submitted all that documents. So even if they told us to reset and we immediately submitted everything the next day, it's still this long delay because you're dealing with a state agency that has a queue of other projects. And we just go to the back of the queue, and then when it gets to our turn, we'll be there. So there's no way to kind of jumpstart that. And again, that's not our decision, but I'm just trying to, again, explain to you guys what the options are and what the consequences of those options. And if you decide to do it, that's fine too. But again, just trying to, put things in context as you're having this kind of very important discussion.
Getting back to this matter of cost and comparison, when we put a program forward and they explore that over the next month and a half, and they'll come up with what they think it could cost, we still, the town or all of us together as the select board and this building committee and the school committee may not have a real clear idea of what the MSBA project would cost. So if it does go down that pathway of non-MSBA path, which is we buy it outright as the town, we're not looking for reimbursement because we think that it will be something that will maybe move faster, might be, cost effective otherwise.
Yep.
But I think it will, to say out loud, do you agree that it may be hard for the public to kind of reconcile that choice without all those facts at the time when we have to vote, because that information from a time perspective just might not be available. So the idea of the town wanting to buy it as an asset, as a taxpayer and Milton resident, I would agree 100%. This is an asset that I think the town would be wise to purchase, and I think the select board feels similarly and the town administrator does. And then if the schools can make it work, then great. If not, it can be a town asset that can be utilized by the town another way. Just wanna try to make sure that as we walk our way through this work in June and July, August, and then we begin to get in front of the voters, that we're really explicit about what we can show them for comparisons and what we can't and why. And that's just a function of the timing and so forth. And just to start that narrative now, that we're letting people understand that there will be some missing pieces to this equation that people are gonna try to have to decide on that aren't a matter of us not disclosing that information as much as it's a function of the timing of this project up against the MSBA and then the time that we have to vote it. And that this is an open purchase, it's a real estate purchase in an open market. It's not something that we're bidding, you know, we have to decide whether we're gonna go to the open market to purchase the space or not, so. Kind of wanna get that traction going with the public as we begin to socialize this with the community.
Yeah, and just to that point, so for the MSBA, module that we're looking at, we have two options. Previously, the school building committee, as many of you were aware, we were going down a path on our own. We weren't accepted to MSBA. And the reason we were doing that is, as we're seeing with MSBA, it's a slow process. And the reason we were doing that is we can get to a solution faster. So in the summer of 2024, we finalized our conceptual design for a middle school option that was there for the similar enrollment. So the cost of it at the time was $173 million. The timeline, again, if we had passed it then, was to have a school open in 2027. Keep that in mind. So that was not put forward by the select board at the time, and that was fine. Immediately afterwards, we were selected to MSBA. One of the questions we asked our OPM at the time was, what is our reimbursement? And our reimbursement under MSBA is a 45% reimbursement on eligible costs. So an overall project has eligible costs and has ineligible costs. You can come up to an effective rate, so looking at past projects, that 45% gets diluted down to an effective rate. The effective rate that our OPM suggested was about 28%. So when you take a $173 million project and you look at a 28% reimbursement on there, roughly $45 to $50 million. So that 173 comes down in the 125 area. So when you are asked to compare these two options, you can use that as a baseline for it of, if today it was a $173 million project with the reimbursement that we're anticipating from MSBA, it really is about a $125 million project there. And then, for the option that we're looking at here for, again, whatever option is here, the architects are gonna give you an option for that programmable cost estimate there. So like the joke I keep making about this, I use them like at work all the time, it's like we're comparing apples to pineapples. They're both, fruits that are there, they taste different. But, there's similarities, but they're very different at different things there. And I think that's, where everyone's gonna look to you guys to say, here's an option for X dollars, how does it address our overcrowding for where we're at now? And here's another option for X dollars that does something else. And then that's honestly for you guys to make that determination.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just want to go back to the question that Lizzie raised. We have an agreement with an architect to do a design analysis of whatever program we give them. And I assume I don't know if whatever we're paying is publicly known. I can't remember if we discussed that, but it's some reasonable sum of money that's coming out of the school building committee budget. And I assume if we paid them twice that amount, they could do 2 design analyses. And I'm wondering, like, the idea of, like, okay, we can figure out one option and they'll tell us whether that option will work. And then if we want the second option, first we have to spend 8-figure sum of money to buy the land, and then we'll figure out whether the K-5 option will work and we'll get MSBA reimbursement. I'm kind of wondering if there's been a discussion of paying for an analysis of 2 options. One, the one we're talking about, and one that will be eligible under MSBA. So that we know when the select board, just to finish my thought, if this goes on the ballot, we have a clear sense of what the purpose of the purchase is. It's either we think it's most likely for a school, because one of these two options will work, or it's most likely not for a school. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that'd be great. If we had three options, right, we could say, here are our top three, and let's do that. We don't, the issue is time. And so the threshold in public procurement is for design services is $30,000 and $300,000 in construction costs. If you go over both of those thresholds, you have to do a public procurement process, which is gonna be 3 weeks, right? And we don't have 3 weeks to lose, so we have to keep the design, the construction cost is gonna be more than $300,000. So we have to keep design under $30,000 in order to not have to go through an extended procurement process. Given that the select board has to make a decision by August 5th, and that the library is going out to bid, or kind of publicly starting to get interest in the sale of property on July 30th or August 1st. And the architect is gonna need several months to create even one design, much less multiple designs. We just don't have the running room to kind of get both of them, which is why the difficult challenge in front of this committee tonight is, what is one that we want to study? And I think the best we're gonna be able to do for the select board as we try and give them direction as to if this is a useful investment for the town for a school project perspective, is to say, is there a school project that could fit on the site? Not necessarily that is the one we want to do on the site, but it is feasible we could do a school project on the site. And then, as Sean said, we have a separate path where in about 2 months, hopefully we'll have an architect on board, and that architect can start kind of coming up with these designs. That's gonna drag us a little bit past the August kind of timeline, the purchase of this timeline, so we could, to your point, pivot a little bit later on. We aren't 100% locked in. We just don't have a whole lot of time till August. The select board could delay their decision, because the August 5th is in order to put it on the vote for the November election. They could delay that, they could separate it from the November election and do it at a later date. Part of the question there is, what is La Bore's timeline for sale? Like, we don't have the property, we don't have agreement with La Bore, we need La Bore to want to sell it to us. And so that's another piece that we don't know here, select board, town administrator are responsible for, and we just don't have that answer today. In terms of like, would La Bore wait until December to sell to us? That would give us a lot more time to figure this out, that would be great. Maybe they would, probably not. And so we have to kind of make a decision today as a committee based on what we know, and what we know is, or the timeline we're working with really is like the beginning of August, we need to have a sense of a plan. And the architects we worked with is like, they need to know 2 weeks ago in order to really get us something for August, so they'll work their tail off to get something for us for August. But they don't have enough time to do multiple projects. Sorry, please.
Sorry, just to provide some more context, that might help your discussion later on too. So prior to the school building committee being appointed in 2019, the school committee at the time hired DRA architects that built all the schools and designed everything and do a space needs study, right? So that space needs study was done 2018, and the outcome of that had multiple options on there, which were additions or renovations to existing schools, and these were seen as like short-term solutions that weren't there. The long-term solutions that they had was a new elementary school, K-5. They also looked at an early childhood education center, and they had kind of conceptual floor plans for it on the backside of the high school and stuff like that. So, you know, the options that you're talking about tonight aren't just coming out of thin air. They were studied by professionals before. They were outcomes that came out of like an overall study that was there. So I just want to, you know, let you know, like, school building committee, when we took those on, we were looking at a new elementary school at the time. And then as we saw the, you know, the over enrollment, just because of the delays and everything going on, migrating up to the middle school, that's where we said, all right, is there a different way of doing this? And while we were going down that path of looking at a program or an alternate program, that's where we identified the land on Gow Road, and they both kind of merged at the same time. So I'm just providing that as context, that if La Bore is decided upon, there were previous kind of independent professionals that looked at this and looked at those options and said that those are actually feasible options too. But again, at the time, it was like 2018. So I just don't want you to think like some of those things that you guys were discussing were, you know, not thought about before.
That's great history, thank you for that, Sean.
Sean, I did have a question. I know you
Sure.
mentioned in 2024, the cost of the proposed new school is 173 million. Do you know roughly where it is now, or is it roughly around the same?
It's a good question, I don't. I would assume, I think at the time we were saying aim for like a 2 to 3% escalation per year. So roughly, $5 to $6 million each year, so
Okay.
my guess is probably somewhere 180, 190 at this point,
Okay.
off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But definitely more than 173 there.
Okay. And then because Lever is an existing site, is there fall under a different reimbursement rate through MSBA, or is it similar because like the structure is there?
Yeah, good question. I don't know on that one. So, because it's not an ad reno, because it's like not an existing school, like it's a site that we're building and it's not a school that we own. So I honestly don't know how they would look at the new construction costs there, obviously would fall under whatever it falls under for the reimbursement that we're having, but the renovation costs that are there, I don't know how they would address those.
Okay. And then what, if we're following through, because we're on module 2 now, if we
Yep.
were to go through, what is kind of our timeline? Are we looking at completing whichever path we decide to go?
Yeah, if we stay down the path that we're going without hitting the reset button that I talked about to like return back, we're hoping to have the overall ballot question for whatever project it might be in 2028, so a couple years out. We want to get the architect on board, start our design, and then get to a place, I think it's module 5, where it's funding the project that they call it, where we have a price and we can put it in front of everybody of, here's the project, here's how much it will cost, here's the impact to the taxpayers that we're gonna see. So our aim for that, I think, is around 2028, annual town meeting, 2028 in May. And then, construction, final design and construction following that, so probably a school open 2031.
30. Okay.
Yeah, 2030, 2031, something.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Steve?
Sorry. Do we have any concept of how well utilized that main building, the mansion, would be? That and the side building that would have OT, PT stuff, and like, given what we have in the district now for administrative staff and all those roles, like, how well will we actually be utilizing that space, moving people over? I just remember walking through the mansion and seeing there are a ton of like offices, there's a lot of office space, and it was hard for me to imagine that we would actually utilize, so I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so for me, my focus has mainly been student focused.
Sure.
The administrative end of it, I don't know. I know in your previous discussion, we were talking about, the space that we're creating as part of the Gow Road, like middle school before, and creating additional administrative space. And that was a goal to try to move some of the administrative out of the high school to kind of free up everything, all levels down. But as far as specific, like how administrative existing space would migrate over there, we haven't looked at that, but that is something we can ask the architects to add on to, that they're looking at. We can have that answer in August.
I was mainly just more interested because, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it would be great for them to assess that, and you could let them know exactly how many offices we currently have and which ones we thought would be moving in that area. But and the public should know that school committee folks did tour the site as well, so now you're actually getting a chance to see that there are so many nooks and crannies in that building. But, if we move the central office business functions, the superintendent's office, special education services, our DEIB office, our school registration, and if we find ourselves with more room, we would invite the town, any service delivery to the town that wanted to be part of that building would obviously be welcome. But it would be really nice to go through the space for space count, because it does feel like there'd be a little bit more space than we would need. My goal would be to have, if we were planning in the future, would be to have a family center there, which would, I think, really take up a lot of the first floor for our families to be coming, and whether or not we could have our school committee meetings and all that just space there as well. So, but it's definitely a big question. And the second question was, if we're not going to renovate this building B, how would we utilize that? And I think that we could actually utilize that without much renovation at all, in order to provide different types of support services for the students as well, so. But I think that if they can actually move that into their work or scope of work, that would be great, because
Yeah.
maybe I kind of have the same. I'd like to walk the building 9 more times, like, because every time you turn the corner, you find another little space in the room.
Yeah, and you wanna maximize,
Yeah.
you wanna make sure you're maximizing the space that you're buying.
Yeah, I mean, the one nice thing, the initial walk that we went on, the basement of the office of the classroom building, the academic building, you know, Tom McCarthy was looking down there, and they were looking at taking, you know, their staff and utilizing that space.
Facility staff, absolutely, our rental
Yeah,
staff.
that space that some of us.
Consolidated
These
facilities,
are currently in the basement of the high school, so.
Yeah.
if we can
Yeah,
space-
and to my point of like, as an advocate for purchasing it, like I said, I think it's a great asset for the town to buy. And again, whether it's a school or not, I think is kind of what we're all trying to get out of. But could there be other opportunities that the facility offers for the remainder of the town?
Park and rec. You know, there's just so many places for it.
It sounded like at the select board meeting, they were discussing the need to do that parallel. That would be a parallel path for them to be pursuing, right? But while we're looking at this, they're hopefully exploring what those other non-school options would be to utilize the space.
I have a question. Sean, you had mentioned earlier that the project that you want the architect to look at is going to be on building C. So how can we make building A and B feasible, workable for the school, human resource department, et cetera, without any renovation? Because even we walk through it, there's still the ceilings might have to be fixed, and there will be a lot of plumbing issues with the old toilets and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I think it goes back to the earlier question, I think Nathan was saying that like how much renovation triggers those energy code things. So my anticipation would be, we can still have the architect look at everything. To Stevie's question, we have the floor plans, so we know what everything looks like there, and we can look at the floor plans without really going through it to ID, you know, this program can go over this space, this program can go here. But when you're talking about like upgrades to it and stuff like that, I think the way I would do it is, for this overall project that we're talking about, is isolate everything to building C, do that overall project. Walk away, sign the occupancy permit, have that project closed. And then some of those follow-on projects that you're talking about there, you can do them smaller, so it wouldn't trigger that.
Okay.
I think, I mean, having walked through the space with Val and Stevie the other day was, and Sean, it was really nice to be able to see the space, and to Stevie's point, feels like a lot of space, right? Especially in that main mansion, and it's nice that it is air conditioned and stuff. I think that was one of my main concerns, like, does it get hot up here? And it's very comfortable. So I would say, to your point, focusing on that last, the actual classroom building first, and then looking at renovating those others minimally, like, you know, like slowly would make more sense. So, because it's definitely usable, there's some cosmetic upgrades I would do, you know, just you know, ceiling tiles and things like that, but overall, it's pretty well kept, maintained space.
One of the other nice things, just to insert some humor here too, is like, we're in one of the new conference rooms right now, it's beautiful, I think everybody likes it. There are a couple of very nice conference rooms over there too, that if the town were to own it, it gives us kind of more space that we can actually have meetings in and stuff like that, or a variety of different spaces that we can actually operate out of too. So,
Council on Aging, you know, I mean,
Correct.
there's just a lot of space for cross work between, you know, different functions. It would be very interesting.
Yeah.
So Sean, before I go and show my slides, and if you're staying, that would be great. The way I framed the updated presentation goal was to revisit our main 20 options and bring forward a recommendation to the school committee in order to provide the architectural firm an initial option to review the space needs assessment and potential program for the site. And I say that out loud because I want to kind of release the pressure a little bit. We don't have to get this perfect now. We're going to choose one to have them take a look to see if it's actually in the ballpark of feasible, to use, you know, regular words. And if that makes sense, we can hand it to them. They can give us what they need to say, you know, if the town wants to buy it, great. And if the town wants to buy it with a potential school option, there's one that kind of makes sense. And you can actually change that if we do purchase it, and we want to revisit that conversation And to summarize, if we wanna revisit it through an MSBA path, it's either gotta be a K to 5 or a preschool. So we already have that pathway that we can actually go down because our MSBA partnership is not site specific. If we wanna do it without the MSBA, we still have time to revisit and say, you know what, let's go back to that 8th grade option, let's go back to that K-6 option, let's go back to that whatever other option, we'll have time to do that. So I only say that to kind of lower the pressure of the decision that we're about to make, because time is very, very valuable in getting this work up and running in order to have the window of work done in order for it to be decided in time for it to actually be considered seriously and move forward on, or not. That depends on us just moving that ball forward, so kind of a preview of setting the expectations for how we may wanna talk about these options today.
Any other questions for Sean before we pivot to the second part of the conversation?
Yeah, just to your point, I'm free to stay,
Okay.
whatever you guys need, so happy to
Yeah, we're not
have you
letting you
stay.
go.
No, that's fine, the sitter's paid till later, so.
So, on behalf of the full school building committee that has been working on this issue since 2019, I wanna thank them for all their hours and time in pursuing the really worthy goal of providing the schools more space in order to serve the students of the town. And if this is a curveball in any way that makes their work a little different and goes down a different path, I appreciate that flexibility. And I really respect that they're able to pivot if needed in order to support this project moving forward. And thank them again for their work for the project that we're already on, that could also be the path that we take moving forward. So thank you, Sean, and thank you to the team as well, appreciate it.
Thank you, I mean, as you're aware, it's multiple times we've done this, so
Yeah.
we've looked at fund,
Lots of
looked at, this parallel path that I talked about, we've had multiple parallel paths along this whole road, so. I mean, we're excited to get something, and the one thing I enjoyed about hearing the discussion at your last meeting was everybody's, acknowledgement that we need more space for the school, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, we do, and thank you.
Okay, Lizzie, you have the Sean slides, if you can pull those up again to kind of provide the framing for the group. The goal of this part of the conversation will be to hear from the school department on the recommendations, ask whatever clarifying questions, but to get to a design, a singular design that we would like to recommend. To John's point, help us get in the ballpark of feasibility for the site in order to give the architect that we are purchasing through the through the school building committee, some direction to kind of move forward with. And the goal of that is to kind of give the select board some information relating to their decision on whether or not to purchase this property and for how much. So those are, I appreciate John sharing those steps, and that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish here. With that, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you very much. So, on the off week of our school committee meetings, I meet with Mark and Anna to kind of think about what's on the agenda for the next meeting, and we kind of scratched out a little bit. It would be helpful if we revisited the options and then had this visual of what we think will work and what we think will not work. So, trying to provide that quick assessment in this slideshow, but as these are self-standing presentations, I also want to make sure that we provide the context as well. So this is the 2.0 version of our Labouré presentation for June 3. On the next slide, you can see, as Sean has showed as well, that we have the Labouré site is Building A, which is the home/mansion part of the building that would not be renovated, that would be housing central office and other essential functions that are non-school related in terms of classroom-based work. It could also house any town-based office as well. In the aqua color on the left-hand side of the screen is Building B, which would be support staff space and other types of space used as well. And then in orange, Building C would be the main space that the building would be for school classrooms, for whichever grade would go in, potentially with any kind of an addition that would need to happen to increase space depending on the cohort that we choose to move over. On the next site, reiterating what we just said, this is the potential that we're looking at in terms of how the building can be utilized. This is a very high level look at how we can utilize that space. Then we go to slide 4, we're looking at the context I think it's very helpful to have Sean here tonight to kind of remind us of where we are in this arc of work from 2019 for the school building committee to now, in the MSBA path that could be utilized for this Labouré option, and or have it be a non-MSBA option. But it has been determined, to Sean's point, that the space needs of the school are real and that we could use more space to service our students pre-K to 12. And that the first thing we want to actually look at is whether or not a Labouré site option could actually achieve that goal. Because if it can't achieve the goal of saving or increasing our footprint in order to serve our students, then it's something that we would pull back from. So that's the major goal. So we're asked for this high-level analysis. The updated goal on slide 5 is to really kind of slow this down a little bit for tonight and take the hot air out of the balloon, that we're not setting anything in stone tonight. What we want to do is revisit the May 20 options, bring forward a recommendation to the school committee in order to provide the architectural firm our initial program option to review a space needs assessment and potential program fit for the site. So as Sean had said earlier, that if we go forward with anything tonight and vote on it and have that explored over the summer, that if the building was purchased and then we have it as an asset for the town, and the town would like the schools to be able to utilize that, there is room for that assessment to be different or that course of action to be changed. And remember, our MSBA pathway parallel to this, it could be the K-5 school or it could be a preschool and fit right into the MSBA pathway. So a lot of options, we're not locking ourselves into anything at this time. The timeline has been consistent, as Sean outlined in his slides, and I will provide in mine as well. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, we had a rubric that we went through on slide 6. First of all, it has to address the space needs of the Milton Public Schools. Can the grade actually fit with additional renovation and potential additions to the site? Is the grade or program an educational fit for the site, and are there operational costs associated with that? And when we talk about the grade program fit for the site, that's also meaning are these transitions, these educational transitions, and how we want to organize our district good for students? Not just a fit of the school, but a fit of how we want the grade configurations for the district in the future to be made up. So the next page on 7 is the list of options that we reviewed through that rubric at our last meeting. A new K-5 school, a grade 9 self-standing 1-grade school, a grade 8 and grade 5 separately, grade 1, a 1-grade school, meaning that each one of those grades would be the only grade at the Labouré site and not part of any other building. So the 9th grade would no longer be part of the high school, the 8th grade would no longer be part of the middle school, and the 5th grade would no longer be part of any of the 4 elementaries. There was also a move for a self-standing grade of just kindergarten, as we thought about that. Kindergarten and pre-K together, and then we talked a little bit about just pre-K. The school committee at that meeting on the 30th also talked about, can we review a little bit and talk a little bit further on adding a K-6 school? So we'll talk a little bit about that in a slide or 2 as well. So when we look at the brief overview of what we talked about on May 20, a new K-5 school, if it was at the Labouré site, we would have to make sure that it could fit how many sections we would like to have there. So if we were to build a new school, we would look at creating enough space for students and taking students from each of the other elementary schools that would actually free the space up at those schools. Redistricting our current neighborhood maps and home schools, which I think is something that we really want to say out loud. This means that we would draw all those maps differently. We would also, if it was a separate school, we would have a full administration in the need to fully equip that with our world language specialists, a different level of art, music, and physical education that we would have to provide as well. So that would be a brand new school just to service those K-5 students. If we did a K-5 school, we'd have to think about also what would the other schools look like if we did build a new school? How many sections of first grade would there be at the Tucker or at the Cunningham or Collicott or the Glover? And we'd have to make sure that we were aware of, when we did build that new school, what that school culture would look like in each one of the schools after the building got shifted over. And not only from a space perspective, but from, does that work? And the reason why I say that is that if we were to draw students out of our schools, Tucker is only a 3-strand school, and we would never, I don't think, want to educationally have it be a 2-strand school. I think a 3-strand school is the smallest school that we would want in terms of a healthy school environment with three classes per grade. And so different conversations about that I think would need to happen. And I do think operational costs may be on the higher end for that. Moving grade 9 there, I think we were all pretty clear that we wouldn't want to separate our grade 9 from the high school. We have a state-of-the-art high school, we just bragged about it in the superintendent's update earlier. Grade 8 had some legs a little bit around, do we want to isolate our 8th graders and try to have them have their own experience that might not be a middle school-like experience, but more of a transition to high school-like experience, whether that's from a social emotional lens and or more importantly from an academic preparation lens, which I think right now Principal Cahill and Dr. Fish are already working on that and trying to create that relationship between 8 and 9 in a more healthy way. I want to applaud, we've already started with the step-up day happened last week that folks have been asking for a long time. We have a step-up day that's scheduled for the fall as well. And we have teachers co-observing 8th grade classes and 9th grade classes. So there's a lot of work going on that I think are already good viable options for that transition from 8 to 9. We thought also about just taking out a 5th grade. And I think, again, I think we all worry about isolating any one grade that is in the middle of our sequence of grades. Picking one out of the middle and isolating it as opposed to picking something at the beginning or something at the end. Would that be a good idea or not? And why would it be effective and what would make it work? But my personal opinion is that when I see isolating a grade in the middle of our pre-K to 12 continuum, that's not the first thing I think of as good educational practice. The next shows the move of kindergarten standing by itself. That does free up space, but it doesn't address our pre-K needs. Having a pre-K and self-standing early childhood center with just pre-K, it'd probably be too much space in the library. So there is thought that maybe a pre-K could be something that could be a little bit entrepreneurial. We could be a charge for fee service for pre-K. We all know that potentially a pre-K expectation from the state Department of Education could be coming down the road. So we would be building capacity if we thought about just having pre-K there. I'm not sure that would justify the full building cost, and also whether or not that would actually remedy our space issue, which is the first thing that we're trying to solve. After walking this again through with the leadership team, the option of the pre-KK, we feel takes our earliest learners at the beginning of our continuum of pre-K to 12 grades. It provides an early childhood center that we feel can be really immersed in what all early childhood students need and have professionals dedicated to just that work at one site where we can prepare our students who are coming to us at 3 years old, 4 years old, and then at 5 years old, and really enriching them in a way that prepares them for what is traditionally an elementary setting for 1 through 5. And that is something that people still have verbalized real support for in terms of moving something forward. We also, at this table 2 weeks ago, talked about the K to 6 school. And I apologize to the group, my head wasn't wrapped around it, and so we actually talked about it a couple of times. But this would really look at, how would Glover fit a 6th grade, how would Tucker fit a 6th grade? What we would do is actually thin out every school just enough to have a 5th school that was K6. And take some students out of each building and add 6th grade to that in order to provide space at the middle school. And obviously, all of these options provide space for the high school because central office and all the other auxiliary offices come out of the high school and go down. This too would require us to redistrict the school, have a 5th elementary school, and I think the resources of world language and all the other things that we have to provide might stretch a little bit, and I think that we're already kind of stretching that area, but it's certainly something to consider. The other part of this would be, what would we do in 6th grade? Would we go back to a one classroom based 6th grade setting, like an old elementary setting for that group to keep them young? Would we have team teachers there? Would we want to model a middle school option? And one of the things that I've learned in my previous world of doing this kind of work is every transition should be preparing, every last grade should be preparing that grade to make the transition to the next grade. So if we had a sixth grade, we'd want to make sure that there was something a little different about it that prepared them for what seventh grade would look like at Pierce. Just like we're trying to figure out how we want to make eighth grade look a little different even academically to get them prepared for what ninth grade would look like. So when we had a chance to draw this from scratch, we'd really want to really look at our transitions as best we can. So that would be, in this case, if we did a pre-K to, a K to sixth school, and one of them would have to have a pre-K option, making sure that that sixth grade educational model was preparing students for that seventh grade experience. And more importantly, if we have a pre-K experience, how do we get those K students ready for grade one if they leave there? So preparing transitions is important. And we've been talking about transitions for the last 3 weeks around 8 to 9, 5 to 6, and pre-K to K already in how that district's already formulated. So this overview, we ran it by the leadership team again, and this is the slide that just kind of shows, like, as we start to look at things and we have to make a decision, we as a leadership team felt that we could strike these off and really recommend the pre-KK, which would be roughly 340 or 50 students, plus another 120 preschool. But remember, those 120 are not all in the preschool all the time. There's a half-day program, so the capacity of the building isn't for the full 120. We really believe that that early childhood center would best serve the students in Milton moving forward. We left on the why preschool and/or K is a fit document and statements, and I'm open to any questions that the group has.
Thank you, John. Questions from members? Steve, thank you.
So I just wanted to go back a little bit to the middle school. So the middle school does still have a space constraint, yes? Pierce still has space constraint. And my only hesitation about this is how we are helping Pierce when we do this, because I feel like the long-term strategy is to try and carve out space so that we don't, right? So is there, what are we doing for Pierce?
So as we compare the MSBA model and potentially the MSBA model in this, the comparison will be, we're not giving Pierce any space remedy as much as we are giving it to elementary and we are giving it to high school. So the honest answer is we're really not. And that has to be factored into what decision we make moving forward around whether or not the other option's better and we might want to stay with the MSBA or stay with this. And it also, as I tried to make sure that we were saying a few times, if we feel like that is a major piece that's missing in the fall or in the winter after this building is purchased and becomes an option, do we want to revisit that if that becomes a priority? Talking with Bill Fish, he thinks he's fine, but that's fine, that's not great, right? And so we understand that that's one of the trade-offs that we have. And our enrollment increases are really seen at the elementary level. In the high school, we do have a transitionary period where folks do not come into middle school and then come back for high school. We want everybody to come into elementary, middle, and high school, so we would like to build capacity and have it available because we want everybody to come. And I do think part of the allure of a 7th and 8th grade school that Sean has been working on is really creating that new, built, fresh idea of how 7th and 8th grade can work in order to keep all those parents in the Milton Public Schools, which is actually a priority.
I know a couple of years ago when we were doing this space studies for the individual, all 6 buildings, we saw Milton Access. Now that if we're looking at potentially La Brea and there's all this additional space there, that could we look at maybe convincing them to move?
No, I looked at that in depth. First of all, it's like one small classroom is the space they have, so just out of respect to our guests from back here. So it wouldn't, even moving them doesn't really move the needle that much. But the issue is that's the head-end room, which cannot be moved. It's very integrated within the infrastructure. it's the head-end room of the network.
Okay, not.
So that is in that space, and so that is why they are there for their public broadcasting, and that cannot be moved.
What is that
easily.
word that you're saying? Head in?
Head in.
It's a
It's
telecommunity, it's the brains.
Okay.
It's the brains of the system, because that used to be the high school, and that was like the central of the district, and so that still remains in there even after the constructions. They didn't move that, there was just, I talked to them because they were going through a whole IT kind of upgrade stuff with the work like Zulus was doing around like IT infrastructure, and so was this a time to move it, and they didn't move it, and so it's there, they're gonna be there, there's no real way
No, that makes sense.
of getting much space.
Just
Please.
one comment to yours too, is if this was an option and the middle school became, a focus that you wanted to look on, you could look at the additional project in the future that could address the middle school too. So, I mean, I don't want you thinking that if this option is chosen, the middle school, nothing will ever get solved. There is opportunities to do stuff in the future. It would just be another project that we could do later on or something like that. It wouldn't be babies by that time. But I just wanna say that, similar to, John's point earlier, like this is an option that you're looking at now. There's still a lot of other opportunities that will come. So I just don't wanna think that if you choose this, the middle school would never get addressed.
And did we, I know you'd initially mentioned that when we were doing looking at additions years ago to each of, was there an option for the middle school potentially of adding on? Was there any site constraints?
Yeah, that's a funny one because they looked at the back of it and they had an addition off the back of it. And through the work I did with the Conservation Commission for, what we did with the land swap, I was educated on, we have Pine Tree Brook that runs right behind the middle school. There's certain setbacks on that were infringed upon by that add-on that they were looking at. So the add-on that you might see as part of that couldn't be that big, but there was, potential that you could look at to add on to the middle school at some point. So, and that's why I just wanted to bring it up, I appreciate you remembering that too, because again, it's not something that can never be done later on or something like that, but there also would be costs associated with that, so that gets back to that apples to pineapples comparison that you guys want to mention.
And I think that's the essence of the dilemma, right? It's if it doesn't meet the space needs, what meets most of it but not all of it, what's the cost? Is the cost at a value that's less than the other project, that it's worth not having space added to the middle school of one part of this puzzle, but it solves enough of the puzzle at the cost, is that a value added to the town, because it's not gonna be perfect and and then the other part of the cost is opening up sooner than later. I mean, Sean's been at this for 9 years, 10 years.
Don't take that.
And so there are children that have there are families who started this conversation whose children will see a graduation on Sunday, and we really wanna be able to. So the other element that we wanna pay attention to is just time and execution of the added space for the families that we have moving in. And so all those variables will play into it, sure.
Could we, so in my mind, we debated this option quite a bit, and it does seem like probably the most credible option. But it also seems like the second most credible option is a K-5 option, because it's the one that will be approved for financing through the MSBA program. Could we just spend, and I don't know if we could go back to the slides, if we could just spend a few more minutes on that one.
And just to clarify, like a K6 would not be counted as a K5, so that's just off the table for MSBA.
Correct.
Okay.
And then just further context, a K-5 one would have to be for 495 students,
Okay.
not for the 350 that were discussed before.
So that's where I wanted to start. So so MSBA is approved for 495 students.
Yes.
Do we even, we must have some kind of theory, square footage divided by number of people, whatever. Can building C hold 495 students?
No. So the simple way we can do it is MSBA the reason they give you these enrollment numbers, there's a spreadsheet with a lot of formulas to it. You plug in your enrollment at the bottom and it spits out what their program will allow you for space. So that would be a first start. That if you wanted to look at that, take that spreadsheet, put the 495 in there, see how much square footage you have, but it will way eclipse what you have for building C.
How much bigger would building C need to be to hold 495 students?
I have to do some rough math. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You'd have, if you take an average class size, call it 25 kids, 495 divided by 25, that's how many classrooms you'd have. I think building C had 13 classrooms or something. 12. And then,
At least
I would do it, but my
20.
laptop died and I can't plug it in. 20.
So 20, so we need 7 more classrooms than what's currently in there, which we could build, right?
And you had to build a cafeteria and gymnasium.
You have to do that again.
True.
Oh, you don't have to build a gymnasium for early
Yeah.
childhood, right?
Cafeteria.
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 Okay, so you'd have to build an additional 7 classrooms and like an additional facility room.
Yeah, and just more than 7 classrooms would be the core classrooms.
Yeah.
You need all the ancillary co-op spaces and
Alright.
offices, you need the
Yeah.
music room, right, the art room, any of that other stuff. So it does end up being more, there's probably some of those ancillary spaces that also apply for a pre-K, but
Yeah.
more so if you have a full K through 5 model.
And having just gone through this, the MSBA square footage requirements are for classrooms a certain size. But then there has to be a corresponding number of equitable space for special education students, half rooms, small rooms, and small spaces for EL and special education that would be baked into that too, so in that is not negotiable. To Sean's point, there is a spreadsheet, and you plug in your number, and they have an algorithm that says, well, this X percentage will be students with IEPs that would need these kind of spaces, so to Mark's point, these are just your generic classroom spaces, the corresponding spaces around special education, EL offices, et cetera, would really.
Yeah, and to that point too, so one of the things when we were going on our own before, when we were fine tuning the design we were doing, we were scaling down the kind of classroom sizes because we weren't in MSBA and constrained to that. But Mark, you remember that if we would go into MSBA, it was gonna require us to get bigger classroom sizes because they have minimum sizes that we have to do. So the 725 square foot classrooms that exist there now would have to expand to accommodate that for MSBA.
Yeah, so the 12 existing wouldn't actually.
Would be
12.
less, yeah.
Maybe less. Okay, I don't wanna belabor this point, I know we're evaluating the education program, but I also just want to at least try to mentally model the financial impact here. Like, do you think, ask you to do things that we're paying an architect to do in your head right now. Like, is it even, I don't know what's buildable on the site, but like, let's imagine, I don't know, it sounds like we're gonna have to build, we would have to build a building that is like the size of building C. Something added on to that, like can we even go that big on that site?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, again, I think you asked the question, how big is Tucker? Tucker's 440 kids. So
Yeah.
we need ultimately a facility that is larger than Tucker in order to
Okay.
put this as a comparison point. And you probably, and it depends on, again, what do you have to do with building B? And then if you're keeping the mansion and not touching it, right, that's a space constraint on the site. Because the site's fairly large, if you're gonna demo it all and fit something there, maybe
Yeah.
fit something. But we're not gonna wanna do that. So it's feasible, I think you're right, like I totally agree with you, I think the K-5 is still a really interesting thing because it keeps us in the MSBA, it gives us that reimbursement. What is the size of the addition that you put on compared to how big does that need to be in terms of bigger than the pre-KK compared to then what is the financial benefit of staying in an MSBA and the
Yeah.
reimbursement we can
Yeah,
get.
that's exactly what it,
Yeah, no, I totally agree, I think
Yeah.
that's right. And I think there could be some benefit, it might just be make the site too tight, but again, we have Tucker and Tucker
Yeah.
is already a pretty tight site, and we figure it out and then great school and great community. So I just think as we think about what our architect can do, and to Sean's point of like how we're moving down parallel paths, I'd be really interested in trying to see if we could test fit a K-5 if we end up getting a 495 student K-5 on the site, if we end up getting the property.
Yeah.
And we move forward with an SBA. I think for the information to give to the select board of like, is this a feasible site for any type of school programming? In my mind, going with the smaller, the more conservative option of like, this is not gonna solve 100% of our space needs, neither is a K-5, because a K-5 still doesn't address peers. But like, it's not gonna solve quite as many of our space needs, but it's a small program. See if that fits. If that fits, we have something. If that doesn't even fit, we know a K-5 is not gonna fit. But if that fits and we can figure out that working, then we can move forward with the architect through an SBA. We can try and do a quick test fit on that, and do we think that would fit? And then that brings into these questions of like the financial.
Yeah.
Should we investigate this further? Because there are real benefits with staying with an SBA.
Which almost makes it a good opportunity to go with the pre-KK, because that option will be explored by Sean's folks now. And the K-5 can be actually explored by the MSBA group.
That's my.
So we just have to be a little patient for that to kick in, but we actually have that can happen under this model, you know what I mean? And because it's already would be paid for under the OPM and the design team's work. So it's kind of a, if we can get this done by these folks for the 30 grand real quick and see if it's even fit, would fit in. And then if it does, to Mark's point, then we can always do the K-5 through the MSBA modeling to find out if we want to stay within that model. So if those are the two options that people feel strongly about, we have a methodology or a pathway to do both,
Yeah, one of the things we did, working with Town Administrator Nick Milano, we were aware that Laborate was coming on site or gonna be available at some point, and it happened right as we were issuing the request for services for an OPM, which was good, because when we wrote the OPM one, we actually wrote Laborate as an option to look in there. So we physically wrote that in, knowing that we wanted them at some point potentially, if we purchased it, to have as an option with MSBA. Whereas if we didn't write that in and then tried to bring it in later, again, it might have got us to reset. So we were trying to be proactive on this whole thing, knowing this was a potential option. So we wanted to make sure that was included with the work.
And school building committee can finance both a design review of Laboret for a K-5 option and continue down the path of the 7-8 option kind of simultaneously.
We're spending all the school building committee's money.
Well, we have to look at.
But that's the idea, right?
Yeah.
Like, I
Yes.
just wanna make sure that there's,
Yeah, so
that can actually be done.
Right now for MSBA, the good thing is we have funding strictly for MSBA project of $1.5 million. So under that's to cover the architect and OPM fees to get us to module 5. So there's plenty of funding in there that we can look at all these different options that are there. The one thing I'd caution though is when we go with MSBA, we limit it to just these two sites, because we don't, if something else comes up and we open up to more and we'll get into analysis paralysis, and we'll spend all that money and never get to where we wanna go.
Yeah,
So, you know, I mean, I just say that for everybody to know, but the funding to do all that work, we have that.
I do think this is just really smart, well thought out path forward in terms of trying to go with that smaller option that makes the most sense on this space in terms of renovation, how much we have to do to the space. And then exploring that other option so that we're still, exploring, following this parallel path with both of them. But I think time is of the essence. I think that's the biggest thing, so it's just getting aligned on moving forward. I mean, a lot of things could happen between once August comes, we might, we talked about the November timeline. That might, I don't know, if that's something that they're willing to wait for. So there's a lot of things that we have to hurry up and do, I feel like, to show that we're enthusiastic about this property. And I really appreciate how, the detail that went into this presentation, your presentation as well, to kind of share where we are and what our options are forward, and so this is great. Thank you both so much.
Just one other thing too, just a preview of what may come with the architect and stuff like that. So if the decision is to go with the K pre-K, right? As I mentioned, the existing rooms that are there are 725 square feet. Your existing pre-K K rooms in the elementary schools right now are about 1,200 square feet. Right, so when you're talking classrooms to classrooms, it's not a one-to-one comparison you're talking there. So if the intention is to keep smaller classrooms there, that's fine. The enrollment within that classroom has to reduce. So your biggest classes that you have now, kindergarten are in Collycott. So it's 23 kids in a 1,200 square foot classroom. So if you're gonna take those same kids and move them over to a 725 square foot classroom, in that 725 square feet, are you putting bathrooms in there? Are you building out internal cubbies and squeezing that 725 smaller? Or what the architect's gonna suggest is take some of those walls down and just make 1,200 square foot classrooms out of it, right? And to do that, so now you won't have 13 classrooms, you might have less, but you're accommodating, the more kids. So that's something, the architect's gonna be here, there's gonna be a lot of interaction. I hope you guys don't have plans for the summer. You know what I mean? Because we're gonna be doing work on this, and this is one of the things that they're gonna ask you guys of, programmatically start thinking about the stuff that's there. So I just wanted to bring that up, just so, when they do come along and stuff like that, it'll be good. And then my final point, the architect that we did hire is actually the architect that was doing the previous program at the middle school. She left her firm that she was at, she's at a new firm. So it'll be a familiar face to somebody who worked with him before.
That's great context. I want to be mindful of the time, but also want to give the members opportunity. It was a good conversation, so. Additional questions, Sean, or John, and Steve. Okay, so I appreciate the note, I know there's no vote on the agenda, we still are allowed to vote on it, there's no open meeting law requirement that we have to say vote, it's just a nice thing to do generally, so we can still vote on this. I think we should vote on this in order to give the school building committee direction on kind of what path forward. That also is gonna dictate some work that the school department's gonna have to do with the architect in terms of meeting with them for some of these things that Sean's kind of bringing out, some programmatic information. And so I'll make sure we're being aligned on what we're asking them to do. So if there are no more questions, I might take a motion if somebody wants to make one for proposing which path we would like the architect, we'd like to propose the school building committee procure an architect to move down. I'll have the exact language in mind here.
I'll make a motion that we recommend the school building committee's architect explore design for a pre-K and kindergarten school at Leverett.
Well motioned. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Then all in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Sean, thank you so much for helping guide this
Sure.
conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for all
Have a
your
good
work, as always, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean.
Super helpful.
Have a good night.
Thank you for all your time, Sean.
John, thank you, and Carla and Caitlin and the team for your work as well, and appreciate the work that is to come. I just wanna hedge my own concerns about this whole process with the community, that we don't own the land, so that's something we should be very clear. We do, as great as this thing about La Brea, we don't own it, La Brea owns it. We might not get it, I'm really hopeful the select board and town administrator can position us really well, but we should keep that in mind, as great as this might seem, so let's cross our fingers. Great, thank you. That's, anything else for the superintendent's report?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move over, chair's report, school committee governance retreats. We are trying to figure out some changes potentially to dates. We've thrown out 15th, we've thrown out the 17th. So I think that's still something that I'll try and talk with John offline about to figure out if there is a date. I think the goal is, we obviously want everybody here because having all the members be a part of that kind of, especially the goal conversation for next year will be very important. Pushing it late into August is a problem because one of our members is going on a phenomenal trip and will be gone a significant amount of August. And so, not wanting to delay this until September so that we have some direction going into the year, because there's a lot of work we have. I think trying to figure out what we can do here in the next 2 weeks will be important. So sorry for the back and forth, and appreciate the members' flexibility and everybody's time and commitment.
It seemed like the 16th might still be a live option.
I might be the only one who can't, I
Yeah,
can't have a
you
work
can't
day on the
have-
16th,
okay,
so
sorry.
I might have to.
Okay.
If it works literally for everybody else and not me, then I'm.
No, you'll keep us posted.
I'll
Yeah.
figure it out. I did have just a couple other things I wanted to just mention, just echo John's points about the senior awards. Thank you all for inviting us. Thanks to the high school staff for putting on just a great show as always, and obviously the kids were, I should say, young adults at this point, they're graduates, were very impressive, all the things they won, and to your point, just the community support for donors, just there's so many people on that stage who give money and time and care for our kids year after year, and so that's really impressive and really appreciated. The retirees, Charlene, big shout out to Charlene for organizing that. Said some very nice things that I got to read luckily, but again, she helped put it together with all the principals, and so just appreciate all the work on that end and the time, dedication those folks had as you said, just decades upon decades of commitment, service to our kids, to our community, how much they've given back, which and will be missed, and we're really blessed in this town to have really great people who care about our kids. Excited to see all of you at graduation on Sunday, so hopefully the weather is still looking good and we can do it out on the field. I did want to share, I got an update from Richard Wells the other day. We did pass through it was the House and the Senate vote, $250,000 in funding through fair share for the Tucker Playground project. So we were anticipating that going through, but it has gone through and now it needs to be signed by the governor. But really big thanks to Richard, to Bill Driscoll, especially to the Tucker PTO who applied for this and seeking this funding for the playground project. So I just want to thank all those folks who were involved. And then last thing I want to make sure to say is that tonight is Katie's last meeting with us, and so we tried to lock her down to her desk and she slipped out of the cuffs. So she is leaving us, but just want to say thank you once again, Katie, for all that you've done here in the last 2 years. Really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure working. I think I speak for all the members and just the value you brought to these conversations in really difficult times and less difficult times now because of your work. And so greatly appreciate it. You will be missed. Don't be a stranger.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's good.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And that will do it for my chair's report. We will move over to the Finance Subcommittee report. And I'll quickly pass this over to you, Mr. Hunter.
Okay. I'm gonna try to do my best Mark Loring impersonation, the first Finance Subcommittee report. So we met on Wednesday, went over a couple of things. Katie, and if I get anything wrong here, feel free to correct me. Katie went over just kind of end of year logistics. There's a purchase order freeze in effect for the rest of the year. Lots of advanced purchasing for next year. Payroll stuff happening, and then looking to close the books by mid-July on the prior fiscal year, so that's great. Talked about Katie's transition plan and the hiring, which Superintendent Phelan already gave an update on. They'll overlap for a couple days in June, and the new person will hopefully start at the beginning of July. We spent a lot of time talking about the budget development schedule, or some time talking about it, which I shared around to the group. I'm happy to field any questions on this that people have, and we can continue to talk about it because it is a living document. But this is, a significant work product coming from the Budget Coordinating Committee, which John, Katie, Mark, and I have been participating in. That, probably for the first time in a long time, or maybe the first time ever, kind of outlines the timeline and responsibilities and expected collaboration from various parts of town government to build the following year's budget. And really asks us to start that work in August, largely through discussions and planning, and then progressively collaborating kind of more intensively with other parts of town government over the next few months, and ideally approving a budget and voting on a budget in January of 2027. So that's kind of the purpose of this document. I think we'll use it, reflect on it. It'll evolve, and I suppose we may rebuild it every year after we learn more and use it. And then maybe I'll just close out the finance report. Sorry, let me find my notes here. We also talked about finance committee goals for next year, which we might talk about at the governance retreat in a couple of weeks. So 3 things that kind of came up for the committee. One was successfully executing the building of the FY28 budget. The second is thinking about our sort of, I don't know what the right word is, but policies or principles around how we want to structure fees and how to set expectations around fees for the community. And the third are continuing to build out revolving fund policies, or maybe like sort of an overarching policy for revolving funds. We did that work this year for circuit breaker and for the special education stabilization fund, which is not really a revolving fund, I don't think, but sort of continuing the work of documenting how we want to govern those accounts. And I would just ask, other folks to think about other work that you might want the finance committee to take on next year if something occurs to you, and we can put that in the hopper. Any questions? Did I do better than Mark?
Way better.
All right, cool.
It's a low bar though.
No, not at all. High bar.
Can I just add, I think we spent the end of the meeting talking about the good work that happened this year. And this will be where I can be able to say a couple of nice things about Katie as well. In her 2-year tenure, identifying challenges in FY26 and supporting the closure of the FY25 budget, and then working diligently in order to make sure that there was policies in place that we created during this school year, so that didn't happen again, right? So the policies that we implemented this year were really important. They were safeguards for the school committee and the school community and the school department in order to operate in a way that was very transparent and available for the community to be able to know what was going on with those revolving funds, which were a big piece of what we were trying to work through and what the town was working through. So I want to thank Katie for that work in just 2 years, and really in just 1 year. First year was in identifying the problem, the second year was remedying the problem, and then setting policy so that problem didn't come up again in a way that was as kind of popped up in a way that people had to then be reactive. We will be proactive in that moving forward. So I can congratulate the finance committee for doing that work this year, and also doing some fees work as well, and getting the budget passed this year. So thank you, and thank you, Katie, again. It's a lot of work for 2 years.
You wanna read out the warrants that went approved?
Yeah, so tonight I signed, oh no, I signed one last week too. I don't have that
It's under
number.
the motions.
Oh, okay, hold
The
on.
motions document. I can read them off if that's helpful. So-
Do you have it open right there?
Yeah.
Okay,
So the following 2 warrants have been previously signed and approved. Warrant number 46 dated 5/21/26, the amount of $537,394.21. And warrant 47 dated 5/28/26, the amount of $822,472.43.
I also signed warrant 48 tonight
Okay, in the amount of
in the amount of $577,891.88.
We will keep moving. Up next is policy subcommittee report, and we have some expedited policies to approve.
So, the policy subcommittee met, I think it was last week. We met remotely, it was the only time we could make work, unfortunately. But for policy, we had, the subcommittee review the homeschooling policy, IHBG. There we discussed the inconsistency in the language between the the actual policy and the student handbook that had caused some confusion that a member from the community had raised to us and brought to our attention. So per John's recommendation, we considered a one-year exception to the current homeschool students to help address the issue. The issue is basically about not being able to participate in sports, and there was some in athletics if you're a homeschool student. So there was some confusion, so what we did was make an exception that would just be for this year. And then there would be, this exception would not apply to new homeschool students, so students who register to go homeschool in August. They wouldn't be able to take part in this exception, but for current students, we're just giving that one-year exception. And then the committee also clarified that AP course participation would be similar. It would be only available to students who started the school year in school under the current arrangement and not for future students. So we do have the original policies in your folder, and also the red line version, as well as the final edited one. And as you will notice, we tightened the language and just simplified everything so that it is very, very clear for anyone who sees that. So just really tightening up that language. So we appreciate the community member who brought this to our attention so that we were able to look at this in detail and just kind of make those corrections and make that exception as needed. And then we went, so we'll have to do an expedited reading and vote on it tonight, since this is officially our last meeting. And then the next one was the camera systems policy that we had. And what we did was we kind of reviewed it further. It's about making sure the agreement between the police department having access to district camera systems. The police would have access limited in emergency situations, but not have access throughout all the time as needed. So someone would be designated from the district to provide access to the cameras in case they needed to review that. So we just again tightened that language, and there were some concerns and questions that members had, including how the logging into the system would be tracked, if it would be manually logged in or if it would automatically be logged every time someone had access or was able to access. Stevie, that was a great point that Stevie raised, so we're gonna get some clarification in terms of what the technology can actually do and what we would have to do manually to make sure. So just that's something that we would look at again in the fall, I think, when we regroup for policy. So just a couple more questions, just making sure that everything's streamlined and makes sense.
Questions from members specifically around the one we're going to be voting on here, which is the homeschool policy, homeschool application.
So just so that I'm clear, what we're voting on is the previous policy had provisions for making exceptions where someone could participate in these things, and the red line policy, the one we're voting on tonight, takes those exceptions out and just
Did I finish your question then?
and just straight up says, no, you cannot participate in athletics.
Right, so the policy, the current policy, it says, well, first of all, the policy, the application and the student handbook said different things. We're not aligned. So the first part was just aligning it. That was the really confusing point because they said different things. And then the decision to use language that was either no or yes. The current language was at the superintendent's discretion.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have that, now you're giving people the hope that it will happen. So when they're making this out and they're going to homeschool and they're talking to their child, they're saying, oh, it'll work out. And if that superintendent decides to say no, then we're back to that confusing gray area that current parent exposed to us. We thought it was very, if we felt it wasn't something that we would approve on a regular basis, then we thought we wanted to be very upfront with that and not have people be set up to be disappointed. And rather have it be clear and in writing than subjective at some point, whether it be the principal's decision or the superintendent's decision. I think policy should be more clear like that and not give, sometimes that flexibility makes it harder for those individuals who have to hear the case and continue to make decisions based on a continuum of, if I do it for you, I gotta do it for the next person, and even though every case is different, I just think that the saying no, if that was what we would reasonably say if we were asked, that was our decision to make at the time, then let's just be very clear with it. And the rationale behind each of the no's was, we currently have so many APs being taken by so many of our students, and with the accommodations and the other pieces that it takes to execute that, it's really hard to have anybody from the outside come in. We have already had the practice of not allowing students outside of the Milton Public Schools. Milton Academy students call up a lot. Other schools call and say, oh, you have the economics, we don't have economics in our school. It really is a challenge to introduce anybody into that that's not students that we're aware of and what their accommodations are. And then for the athletics, it was a no, because we hold our students who are in school every day to a certain standard of behavior, grades, and good standing, and we just have no way of comparing that in a homeschool situation. And we didn't feel like that was a balance that we wanted to, or a decision that we had to make. If I had a student who didn't, was asked not to play anymore on the basketball team because of their grades, well, how come the homeschool child can play? We don't even know how their grades work or if they're in school in good standing. So that was the kind of the general rationale. And then the big piece of this was clarity and not leaving people with any kind of false hope and mean greatness, and when they applied exactly what it meant for their child. And I think that the family that brought this to our attention had a very good example that touched on all of this, and so it allowed us to have a really healthy conversation about it at the policy subcommittee. And we did say that there'd be an exception to Anna's point, because that family went through that process and was unable to participate. We did say that we would grant an exception for next year, because we did feel like we did a disservice to that family, that we thought it was important to right that situation specifically, so that family will be made whole next year if they choose to play sports.
Any questions?
I've appreciated the conversation over the past few meetings, and I just really appreciate, John and Carla, your sort of openness to the conversation and to, neither of you had anything to do with creating that set of conflicting documents, but I really appreciated your willingness to try to problem solve with the current situation that we found ourselves in. And I think there are a lot of nuances to the issue and a lot of factors to consider, as there are with basically everything, but I'm thankful for the process that we've been able to have. So thank you, Anna, for leading us through that.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate just making that language absolutely clear, and I think it just, less is more in a way, so it just very clear, so hopefully that's helpful for families going forward in their decision making.
Can I just ask, I don't belabor the point, but how many homeschool applications do we get a year? And I know you went under more.
I think that we have maybe 12
Yeah.
K to 12, the whole district.
Gotcha.
And so therefore that wouldn't, so this is generally high school driven with the AP and the athletic piece of it, so it would be more how many are in the actual high school.
Anna, just a question. So there was a discrepancy between the policy, the handbook, and some third
And-
source.
Yeah,
Or a
and the
second-
application,
the
I think
application.
it's the application for home instruction, which is also in our folder.
So all three said something different? Or
A little
this
bit.
policy said one thing and those two things said a different thing or something?
Oh, yeah, it was hard to follow the dots if you went from one document to the other, so yes.
I don't know how often this comes up. It could be worth taking all our policies and our handbooks and running them through AI or something and asking it to identify areas of discrepancy, just so, because this one feels like, this is not a critique of anybody, but this one feels like probably there's only 12 homeschool families, so this doesn't come up very often. But one that had you looked at both of them, you'd be like, oh yeah, these don't match. I wonder if we should just be proactive in drilling down on that.
No other questions or comments? If there's a motion,
I can make a motion using the expedited approval process to approve the following policies, policy IHBG homeschooling policy and policy IHBG-E application for home instruction. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Great, thank you.
Is that it for policy?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, appreciate you.
Negotiation subcommittee update.
Yeah, so this will be brief, just to keep you all informed that negotiations are ongoing. We met on Monday of this week for a bargaining session, with the MEA still on Unit A. We have our next session next Monday. And, you know, we're continuing to make progress. I think we decided that it would make sense to hold off on an executive session or further detailed discussion of sort of the agreements that we're moving towards until we've had like one more layer of progress, which we anticipate for next week, hopefully. So we'll have to keep everyone in the loop on being able to schedule that opportunity to share some more updates, which would of course be before taking an actual vote to approve a contract, but we're moving forward and appreciate the MEA's on continued engagement with us in this process. Anything any of you would like to add?
Negotiations will be next Thursday.
Next Thursday, sorry, the 11th, right? Yeah.
And nothing else, we'll keep it moving. Thank you very much. Next item is the superintendent search committee report. Back to you.
Yes, so thank you. So the superintendent search subcommittee met last week for the first time, and it was a good sort of opening meeting. I'm providing this report because one of the things we did there was determine that I will be chairing this subcommittee, but I'm very excited to be working with Stevie and Nathan on the committee, and also joined for part of the meeting, which was great, thank you. And it's just a reminder that like our other main subcommittees, these are going to be cross-posted if any of the rest of you would like to join. We had a good discussion. The key pieces that we talked about included just doing a little bit of like context setting for where we've been with superintendent searches in the past, going back to 2022. So we discussed that a little bit. We also talked a little bit about the ways in which the expedited interim superintendent search that we undertook last year is really different from the process that we're preparing to embark upon for this full school committee superintendent search for the next permanent superintendent for Milton Public Schools. We talked a little bit about pros and cons of things we've done in the past, including using MASC, Massachusetts Association of School Committees, as the partner that we used in the previous full superintendent search. A lot of districts do use them as a partner. We talked a little bit about that. We also discussed like what other options would be that school committees can pursue, and those include working with NESDEC is another agency similar to MASC that offers that service to districts, member districts. The Collins Center at UMass Boston is another entity that leads a lot of municipal searches, including superintendent searches. I believe they actually helped Milton hire Nick Milano as our town administrator a few years back. But they are sort of a different type of an option because UMass Boston is a public entity. The third sort of bucket of options we discussed involves going out to do an RFP process in which we would welcome proposals from private search firms which is another thing that districts often do, to hire a search firm that leads a process for you. So we kind of like put those different ideas out on the table. I think we had some general consensus on the group that we're recognizing the challenges of the turnover that we have faced as a district in these recent years. Given that, we feel like a really important responsibility to run a very rigorous, professional and ultimately successful search to get the best possible candidate for Milton. And that led us to kind of think about the subcommittee's interest in pursuing some of these different options that have been tried in these most recent iterations. Collins Center being one, and possible RFP process being another, just to get as many options as we could. And then as a committee, as a full school committee, to evaluate like what makes the most sense. Factors we would need to consider include the cost of working with any provider, including the Collins Center, which I gather is less expensive than working with a private search firm. But that would be a process of cost benefit analysis for us to just figure out, what are they proposing to do for the process, what track record of success do they have, et cetera. Those would be things for us to weigh together. And then, look at budgetarily what's possible and make a decision for how to move forward. This is something that we will be needing to pursue over the summer. Like Sean said, we're gonna be here working anyway on the school building project, so we might as well just work on this too, just kidding. But we do have work to do because we need to kind of identify our partner for the search over the summer in order that they're in place and ready to help us launch the search as we return to school and help, bring the community into the process early in the school year. The timeline we also discussed as a subcommittee would generally look like over the summer identifying our sort of partner who will help us lead the search, and then through the fall would really be an active period of community engagement, getting a search committee in place and all of that, in order to be early in the pool, and trying to hire somebody by January, hopefully, for July 1st of 2027. So those were some of the general things we talked about. And I think, Stevie, Nathan, did I miss anything, or would you like to add your point of view, or Anna for the part you were there?
No,
You covered it.
nailed it.
So we don't, I think one thing we talked about was at our governance retreat, whenever we're able to do that, assuming we can identify a date, like at the beginning of the summer, perhaps to that, this feels like it fits under governance. I mean, it is our primary responsibility in governance to, hire and work with the superintendent. So what I was proposing was the idea that we could bring additional information to the governance retreat if it's possible to have the superintendent search on our agenda at that. I, for example, made an inquiry to the Collins Center. I haven't heard back from them yet, but on behalf of the subcommittee, I went ahead and did that just to see what is their process if they don't need to go through an RFP, because it's UMass, do they provide a proposal, what is it that they do for the process? And I think we had talked about wanting to maybe do both of those, like another parallel path option, really just to try to get ourselves as many options as possible. So the idea would be we could try to gather some additional information to share with the full school committee at the governance retreat, if that's possible, in order to come to a decision this month that would allow us to launch an RFP process. Officially, if we formally decide together that we agree that makes sense to do. And in the meantime, we could have the info from Collins Center to like help inform us about that. But I don't know what any of you think about that. We kind of just want to bring this update and see what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of moving forward with an RFP sooner than later and trying to get that ball rolling so we can have it at the kind of start of the summer and try and get, I love the idea of the RFP or the Collins Center and kind of getting a more robust professional organization here to support the search beyond what MASC was able to provide in the past, given just how essential this is that this goes well. And so I appreciate the committee looking for ways to just maximize our impact and ensure that this is a successful search. So the idea of putting out a governance retreat, yeah, let me just look into that. Again, is it governance or is it something substantial? But either way, I think us needing to meet on this, I completely agree with that point. That we need to figure out how to make sure that happens to give you all the approval you need as a subcommittee to kind of move that forward.
Well, we can start working on like, that's another thing we talked about was starting to try to draft an RFP in the event that we all agree that's something to do. So there are some of the, like some of that work can be happening between now and when we might, you know, whether it's part of governance or something separate since you know, we can work that out, but
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what would we need? We'd need to vote the RFP itself. That we base the RFP. It's probably what we would need to take a vote on as a school committee, because otherwise we could provide general consensus, even here tonight, that like folks are open to kind of an RFP process, that's something I'll work towards.
I mean, to be honest, I think need to do more due diligence on that as far as like what we haven't done an RFP process for this specific
Yeah.
service, you know, so I actually would wanna double check like do you have any thought on that?
So in order to do an RFP, the procurement process goes based on a dollar threshold. So if it's up to $10,000, it's just sound business practice, you don't have to do an RFP. For schools, you can procure goods and services up to $100,000, just based off of 3 quotes. But you have to define a scope of work. So I think it would be really important for that committee to define what they would like this consulting firm or partner to do as a part of the superintendent search. So the scope is gonna be meeting with stakeholders and kind of all of those key pieces. And then when you have that, if it's under 100,000, you can just solicit 3 quotes based off of that scope of work. If it's over 100,000, that's when you would formally have to issue an RFP.
Okay.
Better
That's-
not be over 100,000.
That's helpful because what we've talked about is actually, I don't think we have an expectation that would be over 100,000. Just based on some initial research of what firms charge for this type of process. So I guess then it's just it's a distinction between a formal RFP and soliciting bids.
Soliciting quotes, yes, so you would, but you just need to make sure you have that clearly defined scope of work so that when you're reaching out to all the different companies that you're asking them to quote the same product.
So it's like a closed procurement process, we solicit the quotes, and then do we need to provide evidence that that happened and have that sort of reviewed by somebody, some body?
No, you just have to keep documentation.
Okay, alright.
You get it through email address.
What's
And
that?
You just like, if you're assuming you're gonna send it out through email, and you'll get an email reply or a proposal submitted, that's documentation,
Okay.
because your emails are public record.
And so that's where you are directly contacting providers to ask that they submit a bid. Okay. I mean, it's easy enough to find through the research of all other districts that have been through this process. It's really not that hard to identify like who are what seem to be the most successful firms that districts we would compare ourselves to might use, so is it okay if I follow up with you to just maybe check in around the details of that?
Yes.
And if that's something that we're gonna do in which we don't have to launch a formal RFP process per se, then it seems like it would actually suffice at this point in time to move forward just with a general consensus from the committee that this is a direction that people support, so that I can move forward with that.
Yeah, so the committee can put together kind of a scope of work or
Yeah.
to get the scope of services to send out.
Which again is
Sure.
pretty standard. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
we're not looking to create something that isn't replicated like in every district that takes this path, right? So okay, and just to obviously state for the obvious, like embarking on this process commits the school committee to nothing. It just lets us start to learn what options we have to then formally make a selection when we would get to that point, right?
Yeah, to say it out loud in terms of like, I think the places the committee, we maybe want the full committees, full is maybe have the full committee again, get the scope of work, just so we all are aligned, that that's the scope of work we want. And then obviously when we get the quotes back, maybe we do interviews or what that selection process is, or and I defer to the subcommittees to maybe figure out exactly what that looks like, but obviously we would have to vote on signing the contract and the financial implications.
Right.
That would need to, so the selection of the final step, at that point, that would obviously be something that would need to come up with the committee.
Okay,
Does that sound?
makes sense, thanks, that's helpful.
Thank you for your work on that so
That's
far.
it for now.
That's great.
Get excited.
Great, moving on, approval of meeting minutes. So those were in the folder for the May 20th meeting. Anybody have any edits or concerns?
Just one small edit that I made.
You made it in the document.
I just commented on it. The spelling of the student rep's last name. Yes.
Great, let's just change it. Thank you. Gosh, no. Anything else? If not, I will take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Milton School Committee meeting minutes of May 20th, 2026.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. No discussion, further discussion, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you so much. Next up, we've just talked about our next meeting agenda item will be governance retreat. We'll figure out the exact date and then we'll figure out dates when we get back in August. We'll send those out. We will likely, as we've said, kind of schedule some on and off meetings over the summer to superintendent work board and possibly Labore and possibly negotiations, so there's lingering work, so excited for everybody to stay connected over the summer. Sorry in advance to your families, jumping out of your beach trip to jump on Zoom. Great, if there's nothing else on that, then we will move to item 12, which is actually an executive session. This is related to an open meeting law complaint that's been shared with the board. So we will be going into executive session, and before I make a motion, just to be clear for folks, we'll go into executive session and adjourn directly from executive session. So we're about to adjourn from kind of public session. So with that said, I will make the motion. Motion is made to go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, specifically an open meeting law complaint, and to adjourn directly from executive session, not to return to open session. Is there a second?
Second?
Second. There's a roll call vote. So we'll go around. Nathan?
Yes.
Stevie?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Lizzie?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. We are adjourned into executive session.
I mean,